Now to the Supreme Court and the start of a new era. The first oral arguments of this term were heard yesterday. It was a historic day at the High Court as newly sworn-in Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson took her place on the bench for the first time. This is also the first time 4 women have presided over the court. NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell joins us now with the latest from this day. Hey, Kelly, good morning. So let's start with the new justice on the court. Ketanji Brown Jackson was an active participant, actually, on her first day on the job as the Supreme Court heard a challenge regarding wetlands regulation. What can you tell us about that, and just kind of walk us through what we saw from her, what her role was like yesterday, and if it gives us any clues as how she'll be as a justice?
Well, being inside the courtroom for that oral argument, it was interesting to see when Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson first spoke up and began asking questions of the lawyers who were arguing the case, because it was the first chance to see her in action, engaging with the lawyers, showing her knowledge of the case, and working with her colleagues on the bench. And at times, some of the other justices who have more seniority on the Supreme Court referenced things that Justice Jackson said and worked that into some of their own questioning. And she clearly knew the case well, as you would expect. She's obviously got a lot of experience coming onto the High Court. And what was notable about it in some ways is the first day you might expect someone would sort of take it all in, perhaps sit back and watch how others did. She jumped right in and was fully engaged and participating. And it was a lively debate over an issue that in some ways is very technical, but has far-reaching impacts for people who own property in areas where there are wetlands that are potentially regulated by the federal government. So we learned a lot in that court session about what it means to be adjacent to a federally regulated wetland. And there was a lot of back and forth about the definitions the government would use. And Justice Jackson was asking the lawyer representing the people bringing this case, and it's been a long time fight against the EPA. Remember, a conservative court here, the justices who might be inclined to say less regulation. Justice Jackson is a part of the 3 justices on the liberal wing, so she doesn't change the balance. She was asking some questions about would those homeowners who purchased the land have had some advance warning about the fact that the property they were buying was a wetland and could have potentially been subject to this sort of regulation. So the particulars of that case will be known over time. What really stood out to me, Savannah, was that she was an active participant right from the start of her first case in oral argument.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kelly, also quickly, the Supreme Court made one of its first rejections as well. This involved the MyPillow CEO in connection with the 2020 election. Tell us what happened there and where it goes from here.
One of the standard things the court does at the beginning of the term is puts out a list of cases that they are either going to accept or reject, and they rejected the case of Mike Lindell, who has been a very prominent, regular rally goer, almost a star at the rallies for former President Trump. He has a defamation case that Dominion Voting Systems has brought against him because of his allegations that have been repeatedly known to be false about Dominion Voting Systems having improperly dealt with the 2020 election. He was trying to get the Supreme Court to take that case, and they said no. They rejected that. So a lower court will still go forward with Dominion suing Mike Lindell for defamation. That's one of the prominent cases that certainly popped off the page of many that the court was either accepting or rejecting yesterday. Savannah?
Also, look ahead to today. The Supreme Court is set to hear arguments on an Alabama case that could potentially affect voting rights in the U.S. more broadly. What should we know about it?
This will be one of the marquee cases of this term. And so as we learn more about how it unfolds today, this will dominate a lot of headlines. Voting rights in Alabama, when you think of all the ways that that could affect American life and how the issues of elections are so important in our national debate right now, this is a case where they're looking at Alabama and the electoral map there. And did the state legislature rewrite that map in a way that put black voters at a disadvantage by putting their concentrated power in just one congressional district, when across the state they actually represent almost 30% of the population, but they have the strongest representation in only one congressional district? That's part of what will play out today. We'll hear the oral arguments. This will be a case that people will be watching significantly. The court had previously already taken apart some of the 1965 landmark voting rights case. This is another in the line of that. And so it's one of the most watched cases of this term. And so this is a big day. There are already people lined up all across the street here, right to my right and my left here, waiting for some of the public seats to attend today's oral argument, because the court, for the first time in 2.5 years, is back open with some limited seating for the public after pretty tight COVID restrictions. Savannah?
So much to watch for there, and some people, like you said, will get to see it in person. Kelly O'Donnell, thanks so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.